Jeff, out of state. Like we're in
Yeah.
New York, Quebec, Massachusetts, everywhere. And I had a scare 2 years ago going around a turn on Interstate 89 near Richmond. And I was in two wheel and there was just a dusting of snow. And the back end got loose at like 65 miles an hour.
Yee.
Enough so that I was looking, the truck turned enough that the guy next to me in the lane over, I was looking at him. Yeah.
Straight on.
I didn't make it perpendicular, but like I turned this way and I'm like, oh my God. My daughter was in the back and I heard her catch her breath.
Ugh.
And I went into, that moment where you try not to mess with it too much.
Yeah.
Like foot
Did you
off the
ride it out
gas.
10 block style?
Right. We're just going to point down the road. We're going to go foot off the gas and get ready for the whippies.
Yeah.
And we got through it. And I told my wife about it and she's like, you asshole. Why don't you, number one, why weren't you in four-wheel drive? I was like, you just let me worry about the truck stuff. And then, but she's like, you probably ought to get some winter tires. It's okay.
Yeah,
So,
that won't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that happens, scares shit out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it was like a half an hour. My adrenaline was just peaked.
I bet.
Well,
What are the whippies?
when you correct and then you have the boop, 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 it jumps a little bit. Yeah, and that's where people really lose it, right?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just ready for just keep the wheel pointed down the road. Don't worry about what the ass end does. And we got through it, but that got me.
Yeah.
Well, here we are, less than 3 minutes in, and I already learned a new thing, the whippies. Okay.
Just made that one up on the spot. I'm sure I have another one for you here in a little bit.
Oh, okay. No, you shouldn't have said that. Now I'm not going to steal it. No, I definitely stuck that one in the brain.
Yeah. What are you driving right now, Alex?
We have got a so we're sort of, Jess and I are switching between cars, so we're all sharing different things, but we did put Winters on hers. She's got the bigger version of the F-150, the Navigator. So yeah, and with the Winters on that, man, that thing is, yeah, it's crushing it. Oh, 3 seconds.
Nice.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah, welcome. We got
thanks for having us.
You already got a yo or a ho from Drew.
What's up, Drew?
Yeah, so I was just looking through the dates when y'all were last on. That was January 5th. So you kicked off the year for us last year.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that.
And
so appropriate.
Well, it was the same thing, right? It was Voice of the Customer last year. And I'm scratching my head. How'd you get it in so early this year?
We cut off the date at Q3.
Yeah. Yep. We just said, you know what?
But everything gets so much better in Q4.
Yeah.
Q4 will be next year's report.
Okay.
We'll have it for you, for sure.
Well, it's good to see you two again.
You as well, Alex.
And pretty stoked because, last time, if I recall, you couldn't get into a lot of detail about where the reviews were coming from other than they were coming from Google. We all just kind of assumed they were just clients of Widewail. Is that really the case?
No. So we, Jake, I think in the very beginning of 23 started working on how could we monitor the entire industry, which is at first a technology problem. So you start talking to partners and figuring out how you're going to do it. And we developed that capability by the middle of second half, let's call it Q3 2023, we had it figured out. And so for last year's report, we were able to just go out and get 17,000 plus dealers into a database. We grabbed all the reviews. And then this year, we scheduled the job. So now every single month, we're bringing in all reviews for all new car dealers in the United States.
Wow.
And obviously, doing a ton of really fun analysis of that body of data, right?
It's impressive right there.
It's fun. And part of it that's not easy to see is, of course, we have to generate and maintain a list, right? Like who are the dealers? And that's one of the hardest things if you've ever been a vendor in our industry, frankly. Everybody wants to know where's the list of dealers. And with things like M&A, consolidation is changing very rapidly. But we now have a list that is basically kept up by our team. So what the industry sees as the result of all this work in the background, when we call a dealer, we already have all their data. Our team is using some internal systems to learn about the dealership's performance before we call. And if they find inaccuracies in our scrape list, we update it ourselves. So we have this great feedback loop from our own team. And frankly, occasionally dealers find the list because we do publish it. And we'll reach out and say, hey, my store wasn't here or the name is wrong, whatever, but it's just continually being updated.
And you're making David Pitot feel really jealous. That's an inside joke there for old dealer.com people.
Be it the best list I ever bought. If you're in marketing and you've ever bought a list, the best list is like 80% good. So it feels it's a great advantage for us in a lot of ways to maintain it ourselves.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's what David Pitot was doing for dealer.com. Plus a bunch of other things. Yeah. Yep. But doing it by hand.
Shout out, David. You guys, brilliant.
So, what's different this year?
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about this.
Jake, we didn't talk about. Do you want to talk about some of the high level trends first?
Sure. Okay. So we sort of the report that's available online right now. I'm sure we'll put the URL in the chat, but widewail.com/VOC. We organized it into 5 key insights this year. So headline number 1, we're talking about staff negativity increased 20% year over year, and we can get into what's behind that in a second. Communication is up slightly. Remember, communication is the number 1 driver of negative reviews. And then we have wait times is the big winner of the year. Wait time negativity is down the most of any topic. So that's particularly in the service department, but does come up some in sales. And then pricing, we'll spend more time on pricing. I think there's some interesting split between sales and service and good trends there. And then finally, we have, what's the last one?
Knowledge and EVs.
Yeah, so we've got some sales versus service trends, EV and hybrid versus ICE trends, and then knowledge. Very important in sales and very important in EV. So we've got those headline topics that we've chosen to focus on. What's different this year? 1, we have more data. So we basically doubled the database up to 8 million reviews for the year, and we'll continue to stack that up every year. And this year we have year over year trending data. So the average of 23 compared to the average of 24. We can split that up to a bunch of different cohorts. So we didn't really do this a whole lot last year, but what's the performance of all these topics within the sales department? What's the performance in service, luxury dealers versus non-luxury? So we can look at the different cuts of data to pull out insights specific to certain scenarios. And then within the report, in the communication section, insight number 2 is an example of trending, our trending data. So we can visualize the topic trends on a quarterly basis. And you can see, so like the growth year over year of communication, negativity was only 6.5%. So only a slight raise. But when we trend it and look at the low to high, it's actually up 18%. So there's a bigger trend emerging that is muted a bit in the year over year data.
Can we translate that a little bit more? So when you say communication, this is just to back up for people who might not be familiar with what you guys are doing. You're looking at all the Google reviews. There are 8 million of them for all new car dealerships. And is communication a key word in the reviews that you're hunting for?
Or it can be, but it's not exclusively a keyword. So let's start from the beginning. We've collected this database of 8 million reviews, and then we have AI systems built into Widewail that can analyze what's going on within the reviews. We used natural language processing technology to determine what are the common topics that are talked about. That gives us our baseline. There's 27 of those: price, communication, wait time, sales department, kind of all these things that are commonplace within the dealership experience. And then the AI technology goes through and looks at each review and says, this string of words is talking about communication. They didn't tell me that my car was ready. That's a negative communication mention. So that review gets tagged with communication and tagged negative. And then we can split the reviews up into positive and negative and see how often each tag comes up and start to get pretty granular with the data.
Gotcha. That makes much more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And we have the advantage of being able to teach the system over time, right? So sometimes we'll talk to a dealer group who says, I see your 27 topics, but there's one that I really want to track that's not in here. And what we'll do is basically say, okay, go find me 10 reviews that talk about that topic so that we can give that to the system. And we say, hey, Widewail, these 10 reviews are talking about whatever the topic is the dealer group wants to track, and it will watch for the next set.
Do you have an example of a topic that came from the dealer body?
I knew you were going to call me on that. I think early on, we had a request for a deeper look at something like parking, or the dealer doing a refresh, right? And oftentimes in the refresh, you lose part of your parking lot. And they, service customers, that's a huge issue, or even a sales customer coming in for a test drive. Where do I park them? And so they were really worried that during this construction project, there'd be a lot of negativity around parking. It didn't end up panning out, which is also common. Sometimes our customers will ask us, hey, find this topic, and we'll look over a full year's worth of reviews and find, hey, look, this is less than 1% of the conversation. But sometimes that's a great insight too.
Yeah.
It's not something that you really need to worry about. So there's 27 things that car owners and shoppers talk about. They're super consistent across the entire industry. The drivers, I would say year over year, the change in core drivers of experience is minimal. In other words, staff, communication, those core topics are still what drive the experience in 24 as compared to 23. But now we get an idea of by tracking density of the topics, how are they changing? That makes sense.
Yeah, I got the opportunity to read through this when you shared it with me yesterday, and it's like, yeah, that actually all this lines up with my own experiences as a consumer and what I've seen and lead responses and things like that. I think I'm looking forward to diving in a little deeper and letting you guys break the news on that front. But
yeah, that was probably Yeah. As you're thinking about, I assume you want to talk a little bit about the negativity with staff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all of it. It's all pertinent, and we kind of have to own it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That was, I mean, so just to hop into that topic, even before we did our analysis, we started seeing folks in the industry talking about uh, challenges coming out of COVID, right? And even if you're a seasoned car salesperson, like the sales environment during COVID was really different, right? Like I didn't have to negotiate with you. Like this is the price, and if you don't take it, somebody's going to buy it in 5 minutes because we only have four of these things, and we're not going to get four more. So that was just different. We could move, days on lot was the lowest it ever been. And coming out of it separately of Widewail, we started to hear, hey, we've forgotten how to sell. That was kind of how it started. Nobody's working the CRM. We're not going out there finding prospects. And then incentives started coming back and negotiation was back. Holy cow, people want to negotiate again. And I gotta work hard and communicate well to win this deal. So when we pulled the data, start with the headline, negativity is up. We started trying to make sense of why, right? And we went right where the industry ended up, which is we're asking a lot of our salespeople, number one. Personal opinion, like I like to side first with the store and say a lot has changed, right? Incentives are back, negotiation is back. We got three distinct powertrains. We're not doing a good job investing in our people so they can keep up with that change. That's one of the takeaways that Widewail sees. So if I was talking to a dealer who said, look, what are your ideas, Matt, on where we could invest the next dollar to improve experience in 2025? I would say right into your people, not into a valet service program, not into a bunch of new tech. Let's not try to eliminate roles so we're more profitable. Let's get our staff really comfortable with the amount of information they need to give to the customer to make them transact.
Are you speaking in particular to like vehicle knowledge?
Vehicle knowledge shows up big time. Knowledge as a topic, like not to switch here, but in sales specifically, knowledge is mentioned in 19% of their reviews, of those reviews specific to sales, right? So it's a key driver for the customer. And if you look at two different customer types, as Jake was mentioning, the ICE customer versus the EV customer, the EV customer really cares about knowledge, talks about it more. There's 76% more negativity around the knowledge topic for the EV customer because, again, 1 out of 5 vehicles sold as an EV. We don't always have to talk about it every day. We're maybe not as trained as we should be. That's a problem for our customer. Yeah.
yeah, that EV and where it's going and whether it is worth the time to put into it, that's a whole other topic. Huh?
Yeah, I can't see the future, but I see percentage of sales creeping up, right? I think last time I looked, 7 or 8% of all vehicle sales now are battery electric. So, what comes along with that is people that they want to try it out, but they've got range anxiety. That's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come to the store and say, hey, I'm interested in this battery electric model, what's the range on this trim specifically? And the salesperson's like, let me go look it up. That we're not really instilling confidence in the customer at that point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Who'd we have on a couple of weeks ago? He was talking about changing out the VDP for EV vehicles. He has some
That
really good
was-
points, like including the range and all that good information.
Yep. I can't remember the name of the company directly, but that was with Bill Vaughn was on. I think.
That's right.
Yep. And yeah, they offer a product that makes a bit of a EV argument on the VDPs.
It's like a widget to support
Yes.
EV specifically.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Gives you a visual representation of the range.
There it is.
I think maybe even some
Lectrium.
cost associated. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks,
I liked
John.
it. Made sense.
Yeah. So communication, and I can attest to that. I just went through 10 months of hunting for a car, and yeah. It's funny. I was just having a old friend from Checkered Flag reached out and said, "Hey, can you help me locate a good payment on a car for my mom?" Since going through our product, and then told me about how he'd reached out to 5 dealers right there in the area, and how bad they botched them. Just
Really?
trying to, just in talking it through. So I think that's pretty common nationally.
Well, you
Yeah.
mentioned so there's a rise. I believe earlier you mentioned there's a rise in negativity. Is that across staff or is that dealer specific? What's behind this rise?
I'll take a first swing, Jake, if you want to plug some holes. But if we just start with the staff topic, so we look at all the reviews that are staff tagged. Um, Sales saw an increase in negativity of 27% pointed at staff. Service saw a 15% staff negativity increase. So it was nobody was immune. Sales led the way quite a bit. And sales obviously is a dominant topic. I mean, customers by nature, more sales customers are likely to leave an opinion because they're making such a big purchase. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a little, I mean, we call it troubling. I think these are trends. We're not immune to macro trends. We're going to watch in 25 and see if our industry stabilizes a little bit and what that does to the customer experience. But staff negativity really is a problem across the board.
I predicted that. I believe I predicted that last year on when we went over this. I was like, I think we're going to see an increase between 23 and 24, just from the feeling, just from the experience here at the dealership. People be acting differently lately.
Yeah. Right. And that the communication, and I want to underscore what Jake said. It's the topic trend in communication. So year over year comparison, there's a little increase in negativity in communication, but Q1 2023 through Q3 of 24, that's an 18% increase in negativity there, right? So that is troubling. We're going to watch that pretty closely as we get kind of through Q1 to see if we find stasis in some way. But
Jeff, can you go into how it's been different in your opinion? I'm curious.
Less patience. Just people are. I don't know, man. We've had some people the past couple of years that we've never experienced before. I mean, just people going off the wall. Just
Customers.
some yeah, stuff that just normal everyday interactions.
Yeah,
I'd like
we're
to. I'll try and remember some examples,
Hmm.
but just stuff that shouldn't just people on edge. You know,
Mm.
uh, stuff that typically wouldn't bother someone, and it's like once they get past this point of aggression. I mean, we've nearly had some physical altercations, and that's never happened ever.
get off the
Mm.
social medias
That's
as
strange.
I
as we're
guess
as we're streaming
and
to them.
I'm sure you guys saw that was all over IG on social media last week. It's a gentleman with a Subaru running his car through the showroom floor because they wouldn't return the vehicle for him. I mean, he bought the vehicle as is. He got frustrated. The dealership wasn't going to take it back, so he just ran it through the showroom. You'll hear about these stories from time to time, but there's definitely been an increase.
I gotta see that. That is wild.
It
Yeah,
is.
he had no shame. He just pelted it through the freaking showroom floor.
I'll send you a link, Matt, because the comments for it are pretty cold. But
You know, to go a little deeper here for a minute too, I have to shout out my salespeople out there because they're sort of exposed to the question with no buffer. And what I mean by that is I get a customer who's been doing a whole bunch of research on their own, who shows up in the showroom with their knowledge and a couple of holes, and we don't know where it is. And they're going to surprise us at some point during the walk around or as we discuss their needs with a deep question like, no, I want the one with the big touch screen. And you're expected to just know, right?
Mhm.
Or what's the current program on every single trim level? You're expected to know. Service is a little bit different. So, in service, the majority of our visits are routine maintenance. We kind of know what that's going to look and feel like. We even know kind of what the price is going to be like. If something's going wrong in service, and I'll share some data with you in just a sec. But let's say my check engine light came on, or I hear something funny, so I end up in the service drive. That service advisor gets to say, "Hey, Mr. Murray, we're going to take your vehicle out back and run some diagnostics, and I'll give you a call." The expectation that the customer has in the service drive is different because we can't possibly know what's wrong with your car when you just drive in. And I
Mhm.
see that as a huge difference and a huge advantage to service and the customer experience. Um, and Jake, we actually had some data on this when we looked at. So let me tie these things together here. When we look at, oh, right. So this was related to, we were talking about price and cost earlier. So negativity around cost in service is going up. Negativity around price and sales is coming down. So what's that all about? Right? We just talked about how negotiation is back, incentives are back. In sales, people are starting to feel like they're getting a better deal again versus COVID time, which was take it. That's what you get. In service, although they have this buffer, our customers showing up, we're going and doing some diagnostics, and we're coming back with bigger issues than we've ever seen because vehicles are so much older, right? The average age of the
Yeah.
vehicle is 12.6 years.
Mhm.
So our customers dropping the vehicle off, I'm not expected to know what's wrong right then. That's fine. So knowledge is not as much of an issue in service. But then we're coming back to them and we're saying, hey, Mr. Murray, guess what? We got a $6,000 transmission service we got to do because your 12-year-old Camry says it's time. And people have not been exposed to that. So when we looked in the review data to try to, this was like a supposition that we had, so a theory that we had. We looked in review data and saw that mentions of brakes are up 30% year over year, transmissions up 35% year over year, and engines up 37% year over year. Again, from the customer. This is the voice of the customer,
Mhm.
right? So the point that we made, we just did another webinar. The point that I was making on that webinar basically was, if I go to a dealer website and look at a bunch of vehicles, I get a bunch of pricing info, all the pricing information I could want. If the vehicle costs X, your monthly payment's going to be Y. If you want to lease it, it's this. If you want to buy it outright, right? Like there's a lot of pricing info. It's not always perfect. We know that, but it's directional. You have none of that in service. None of it. Very, very few dealers have a menu on the site. There's like 2 or 3 pages for service, if you're lucky.
With
Sometimes it's just
codes.
one. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. And so our customer has no idea that a brake job all the way around, oftentimes they don't know it's $1,300 on an F-150.
Yeah.
And they're not happy
Well,
about that.
there's another
Well, I'd
side
be
of the
curious
story.
also to know what the average climb in labor hour rate has. I know we've made adjustments. I know all the other dealerships in the area have made adjustments, and not just adjustments in the past several months, but an adjustment almost every single year, increasing that shop labor rate. I mean, it's up there now.
Yeah, I'll throw some actual dollars at you here. So, roughly 4 years ago, when we started to look back at repair orders at my company, the average repair order was just shy of $300. It was like 284 or something like that, if I recall. Um, by the end of 23, the average repair order was $513. And we are showing the average repair order right now of $586. In
Jeez.
all of this time, the average repair order amount that people paid before wanting to trade their car in was $564.
Mm.
So now your average service has gone more than what people are like, F this car, I'm getting another one.
Sounds like cars are becoming boats. It's $1,000 every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the negative reviews or the increase in negative reviews around engine, around products, are you able to tie that to a specific manufacturer?
Yeah, Jake, you want to talk about next steps here? Oh, the individual review, we tie it to a store.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I guess if that store is a multi-point, then that would all bleed together.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Sometime we can go back. What it would do if we just said, "Hey, find me F-150 reviews." We would literally have to find reviews where they said something about the F-150,
Gotcha.
right? Whereas topic related reviews, it's just human language we can associate to the topic. Model is tough. The some of the domestics are tough. Think of the CDJR world.
Yeah.
Most Stellantis points, I think 80 something percent of Stellantis points are CDJR. So sometimes it's hard to pull apart the Jeep experience from the Dodge, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's all blended together for us.
Yeah.
The reality of how it is.
Yeah.
I saw that Drew asked earlier about, Matt, your data point on EVs. So to clarify, that data point was 20% for, correct, yeah, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and battery electric hybrid. And that's,
Yeah.
it's one of the government agency sites. I can post the link later. But you're right. It's they were in Q2 of 24. This site was saying about 8% battery electric. So right around where Drew had mentioned.
Yeah, Drew, we're like 19% non-ice. Let's just say it that way.
Okay.
And that's probably going to increase with hybrids. As all these, some manufacturers are getting out of the pure EV game and going, not completely divorcing their battery technology, but stitching the two together, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Almost
that's
like
why we wanted
Toyota
to
was
look
right.
at hybrids specifically this year in our report and see if there's any nuances in the data there. Let's see if I can
Let's see.
pull that up.
I was a little shocked by Bill Vaughn's comment here. He said they're on their way to $500 diagnosis fees.
Ouch.
Yeah.
$500 to tell me I got to spend another $500. That's tough.
What's the processing fee to go with it? Yeah, I see in some areas where a few dealers are starting to break $1,000 processing fees now.
We're at $7.99.
Yep.
So we want to round out the conversation around the EV customer a little bit. We kind of talked about the more negativity side. So EV customers are more negative around knowledge and helpfulness of staff. That is very clear. Less negativity around car maintenance. I think that adds up. The maintenance experience is very different, and still less negativity around cost of the vehicle, which who knows what happens if you took the state level incentives away. That's a huge boon, clearly. And some states like Vermont runs out. So if you try to buy a car in Q4 in Vermont, the state level incentive dries up. So we probably see a gap, and then Q1 a bunch of EV buyers will head back to market. But you got to celebrate that a little bit. Positivity around deals, more common for the EV customer. So when we talk about where our customers going, the economics are a huge driver. And if we're creating this picture that it costs less to maintain, maybe less to get into, we're just going to have a natural shift to that, those alternative powertrains.
More
It'll be
positivity.
interesting to see if time changes that any as more people have EVs and you're 6, 7 to 10 years with an EV and something decides to happen to that battery.
Something
Yep.
I mean,
decides
hopefully
to
not,
happen,
but
or
yeah.
that
the sun comes up.
I saw a
Yeah.
video the other day. Maybe might have been in Japan, where the taxis are battery electric, but they have stations where they just drive their car over a battery replacement framework. Like, however they're doing, they remove the old one, pop the new one on, and they keep going.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
Huh.
I've not seen that.
I look forward to the day when I can plug my car right into the Milwaukee or DeWalt charger. Oh yeah, got the 18 or the 20 volt. Yeah, that might happen. By the way, there is some new battery technology on the horizon that looks like it'll make this stuff that we're using today pretty caveman-esque.
That's probably what it's going to take.
Yeah, I mean the new stuff that's being talked about, they're saying you're looking at a 500 to 700 mile range and a quarter of the charging time.
Are they sulfur? Do you remember?
I can't remember the name of the element that they're based on, but
I saw something like Toyota was close to a new battery technology to unlock range. But I mean, that's one of the reasons that we've never owned, in my household, we've never had an EV vehicle, because I also have to tow stuff, right? And so and we drive all over New England, and I have range anxiety. I have some friends who have EVs who say, like, hey, take it easy. There's superchargers everywhere. Stop being a baby. But
that
for me,
you're right. Don't get one, Matt. We have one. We have it's a third vehicle in our driveway. But the range changes with temperature, and the charging stations change all the time. So,
what do you mean?
with the exception of the Tesla ones, which don't work for my car. So, and we too take a lot of trips down to Boston, and it's always like, well, could we? But we don't.
Stopping at the Common Man on 89, charging up.
Yeah, well, and we're always, when we're in Boston, we're looking at all the chargers, and it's like they're all taken. So how long are you going to sit here and wait for one to become available? And then is it a stage 2? Then it's going to be a 14-hour wait, or is it a stage 3 and it's 35 minutes? I don't know. Yeah,
You're helping support my decision right now, Alex.
well, yeah. I mean, we lease ours too. That's the other side. I wouldn't buy one personally. But also, it's charging at home is fine.
Yeah.
And that's been nice. So that's what ours is. Just to drop the kids off at school, do the errands. And it was
local
cheap
car
as
and the
hell to
regional
buy.
car.
To lease, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Jake?
You have a local car and a regional car. I could see that working.
Yep.
But we don't have one, so what do I know?
Well, I am familiar with where Matt's trying to drive. If anyone's, we live not far down the street from each other, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what are some additional key sites that you're coming up with this year?
Mm-hmm.
What haven't we talked about just yet here?
I did want to round out the staff conversation a bit, Matt. I think it's not all negative. Staff as a concept is more present this year. So we're seeing growth on both the positive and negative side. So positive mentions of staff are up about 14%, negatives up 20%. So we're seeing more growth on the negative side. But again, in positive reviews, 75% mention staff. So 75% of the time, someone has a good situation, staff plays a role in that. On the negative side, that number is only 25%. So I think this is more of a leading indicator of the challenges that Jeff you're feeling and the concerns that the industry seems to have of can we handle this next era of this next time after the COVID era within dealerships. Can we handle that? This is like early sign that there is some concern there that's necessary because we are trending slightly negative, but it's not some hyperbolic thing where like all negative situations are stemming from people.
Am I reading the report right that the staff at luxury dealers are doing worse than the staff at non-luxury?
It was like a 2 percentage point difference.
Yeah.
Is that all Jaguar?
You got to tell me if you're going to make a joke like that. It was a touch higher. I think our brand scorecard, which we'll publish January, Jake.
January 2nd. Yep.
Yeah, the brand scorecard where we'll take all this data and sort it by manufacturer will help us understand, who's seen some growth year over year in experience and who's maybe coming down the charts a little bit. I saw an early draft. The bottom of that report looked very similar to 2023, but we gotta kind of button it up. I think overall, the reason that we do this, right? The whole reason that Widewail does this is to help dealers in annual planning or decision making around that next investment. So it's sort of, we envision the data almost as occupying the empty seat in the boardroom when we're doing our planning, right? The customer, Widewail's view here is that the customer is the most important in the entire process, period. And what they think and what they say really does matter. As much as we joke about customers being difficult, that's where the money comes from, right? If the customers don't spend their money, we don't have a business. So our hope is that the report at surface level gets dealers interested enough to ask additional questions, like where do I benchmark against this data, right? So Widewail dealers will take those folks on our platform today will take the voice of customer data and they'll hop in the platform to ask these questions. Today, you can filter the platform by these benchmarks so you can see how your customers compare to the sort of national automotive customer and find opportunities to improve. One of the things that I'm struggling with, and I'm coming up on 20 years in the industry, is I continually hear this preference for cost-cutting measures so that our dealers are more profitable. Right? We were super profitable during COVID. We're starting to go back to reality now. We're starting to talk about cost cutting oftentimes. And cost cutting happens a lot of time. Marketing and advertising is an easy one. Marketing budgets get hit anytime we got to save money. But we cannot, scrimp and save at the point of experience. Right? Invest in the people that drive the process, period. And I think I said this last year. I bet the four of us on this call could start a dealership in a town like Burlington with no website, no CRM, no digital retailing tool, no chatbot. None. We'll just use a Foursquare, but we're going to be really good at it, right? We're going to know our product. We're going to greet people. We're going to be there to help them. We're going to be empathetic to their situation. We're not going to try to jam them into a vehicle that's too expensive for them. We're just going to take care of people. Yeah. Alex is going to be salesman of the year. You know what I'm saying though? Like there is this core, like sometimes it's easy to forget that every single dealer is a local business with a captive community that they serve. And the way
Mhm.
you interact with that community determines the next 10 years of success. You can make some short-term decisions to juice profitability and look good on paper, fine. But if you're building a legacy, you do that through your people first.
Good point.
I looked it up. Jaguar's negativity related staff's only 5% above the benchmark. They're not in last place. So
No, I wouldn't think so. They're just easy
not
to
to
pick
drag
on right now.
Jaguar through the mud.
It saddens me. That's a brand that you go way back. My family got their dealership started because of Jaguar, and it's just
Oh, okay.
to see what's happening. But on a different note, we're not showing the report on the screen, and we put the link up to it early in the comments section on both YouTube and Facebook. I'm sorry to the LinkedIn audience, we can't put comments there, but the in the report, which is at widewail.com/VOC, voice of customer, VOC. There are tips for how to remedy some of these things. And one that just stood out to me is about minimal jargon. So just train. That's an easy one to train. Like it's really, like, I'm sure we've all experienced it. Obviously, we're all car guys. So if we went to a dealership and somebody threw, some car jargon at us, we would all get it. But if you go shopping for a TV or anything that's out of your wheelhouse, and the salesperson at Best Buy or whatever just starts saying it's a E3 4 and this one's a E9 10. Oh, you don't know what the fuck that means? Well, sorry. Like, it makes you
Mm-hmm.
stupid. And nobody wants to speak up and say, hey, hold on a second, can you explain that to me? They want to look like they know too. So just getting the jargon out of the sales pitch, especially the service drive. Actually, I just went through this with Freon they were saying, well, you got the more expensive EJ3 or whatever the damn Freon was in my wife's car. And it's like, why did it cost $300 to fill up the Freon, man?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You got nitrogen wheels, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a fleet of old used cars just to keep.
Like, and service them forever? You're never going to buy a new car?
Correct. Yep.
Anything made before COVID, golden.
Yeah.
Much better reliability. But
Yeah. Well, it sure seems that way. I know Toyota's struggling with a lot of different transmission and engine issues across, especially across the truck line. Yeah.
So Toyota's always had coolant and transmission issues, especially in the V8s and the V6s.
Mm-hmm.
But typically it's coming in around, to Matt was pointing out earlier, it's like, hey, your 100,000 some mile Toyota, is the transmission is coming out. Well, yeah, that's about when they're going. And if Toyota, I think the biggest mistake Toyota made was they said that you never have to replace the transmission fluid. And yeah, so this is and also the gasket and the engine. So you get this in the V8s, especially, you get the valley plate leaks. But yeah, that's what's going on.
And I guess that would tie to the fact that you guys were pointing out earlier is people are keeping their vehicles a lot longer. So they're hitting those maintenance points. That's causing an issue, something they weren't expecting.
Take it a step further. It's not just an affordability issue when buying a new car. We had a lack of new cars for a good couple of years there. And we're going to have that hole in our overall inventory until the 2025s turn 3 years old.
True.
Yep.
So
that'll be interesting to watch. I mean, if as a consumer, inflation is up, there were no programs the average price of the vehicle got to $49,000. So a $5,000 or $6,000 transmission service instead of a new loan for $40,000. I mean, I think we can all understand where that's coming from, but you still got to pay that $5,000 or $6,000.
Well,
And
and that's the hard part. How do you pay that? I mean, I know some dealerships have signed up with a few local banks, or I think there's a service or two. I believe we're a part of one that allows you to maybe more easily finance that $6,000 service. But the interest rates, not something I would want to sign up for. But, I
yeah,
guess if you're in a pinch and you need that, whereas if you could just go over and you're able to purchase a new vehicle with nothing down,
yeah,
$6,000 straight out of your pocket versus let's go get a loan, purchase a new vehicle, and the first payment's 800. That's a lot, way more feasible for the consumer.
yeah,
Yeah.
A lot of dealers are now carrying 100,000 plus mile vehicles just because it's so hard to acquire newer ones like we normally would. And the consumer typically isn't educated on what's going to come up on a 100,000 mile car. So you think about it, 80,000 miles, you're talking about belts, you're talking about everything. Everything
yeah.
needs to be replaced or at least watched for very closely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I totally get that.
That's definitely what we're seeing without a doubt. And like there's a few of these that we've mentioned as we've been talking today that we really want to follow along as the industry kind of evolves, or let's even say normalizes over the next couple of years, because it's going to take some time. But that trend of how old are the vehicles and are customers continually talking more in a negative way about the cost of service, that is a clear trend that we're gonna keep an eye on, because there's so many macro trends that sort of impact that directly.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, we'll be asking. I'll certainly be asking the team in the middle of next year just to peek at some of these things and sort of have a mid-year health check, like how are we doing with some of the negative trends that we saw in 24.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not out of the woods yet as an industry. However, I think we've seen our worst spot, and now we're heading towards normalcy. Whereas there's a number of other industries that are just now where the shit's starting to hit the fan for them.
Mm. Who?
Which
Give me more.
industry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, real estate,
Oh, true.
and that's that. I think that one. There's just saw an interesting stat the other day about the real estate industry, or at least the building of homes. So in the up until 72, I think it was, almost 20% of the homes we were building were what would be considered starter homes. So they were affordable for somebody buying their first home. Less than 2% of what we build now is a starter home, and it's been going down and down and down ever since. We are in the biggest housing build boom I think this country's ever had right now. So we are building houses ferociously.
Yeah.
But the average price of the house being built is over $650,000. So that is not a starter home. The other side of the coin.
Actually, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Just not in price. But
Yeah.
but the other side of the coin is that the baby boomers are the ones who are typically affording the more expensive homes right now. They're the ones with the most money. And then the Gen Xers, I think most of us on this call, are right behind them. And we are, 7 or 8 million people less than they are?
About that.
So who's going to afford these homes when the baby boomers stop buying them?
Market reset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Potentially.
We actually saw us tracking real estate prices locally. Prices have come down some in some
A little
areas,
bit.
which is it's not a normal, especially where we live. Houses never get cheaper. Uh, and that was kind of good to see because I've got kids. I talk to my daughter about it all the time. Like you won't be able to buy a house probably until you're 40 for those kids who are in school right now, right?
It's sad. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
no,
Look at it
just
for
go
my
get
son.
go wrench cars. You'll be able to afford one at like 19. That's why our diagnosis fees are going up, right, Drew and Bill in the comments. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
What was the what's the URL again? It's widewail.com/VOC, right?
Yep.
VOC,
Okay.
voice of customer. Yep.
Okay. And is the full report on there, or is it just sectioned out?
Full report is on there. So we removed the gate for the most part this year. So you can just go on and get the key insights, reading it right on the site. There is a premium section that is gated on the lower half of the page. But the key insights, the meat of what we've talked about today, is on that URL and visualized nicely. I think it's a little hard to explain this stuff without the visuals, but the visuals definitely go a long way. So worth checking it out to wrap your head around the details.
By the way, I love that you made this in HTML.
Yeah, it looks slick.
This is really good looking and interactive in the page versus a PDF. It's great.
Cool piece of this is we actually contracted a local artist here in Burlington, Vermont to create the art designs for the report. So this is like, as a marketer, trying to pull inspiration from direct to consumer, where it's always a lot more interesting than B2B. Matt always pushes us to not just be a generic, boring B2B company. And this was our attempt to try to add some flavor to this. The information it's great, it's solid, but we put it in a nice wrapper and worked with this artist Phoebe locally. That it's fantastic. So that was a lot of fun.
Cool.
You know I'm going to be hitting you up for that name.
Phoebe Lowe.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. She did a fantastic job. And that design language you'll now see used in a lot of places where we discuss voice of customer data. So this report is one. We do the brand scorecard. We always do some derivative works throughout the year. We'll do some targeted analysis around industry events, like when the CDK hack. We monitored that pretty closely to see the impact on customer and dealerships. So we'll be back with news throughout the year. This is sort of the pillar though. And my invite to all dealers again is read this and pull it into your context. What's happening at your store that you connect within the data first? And if you ever get interested in how you perform against our benchmarks, we already have all your data. Feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to go through it, show you how you compare to benchmarks. You don't have to be a Widewail client to get answers to some of these questions. We're more than happy to spend some time with you.
It's awfully generous of you.
It's the passion part of what we do. So we tried to do this in 2019. And frankly, some of what we learned in 2019 through an analysis of 10,000 reviews has remained consistent, even as we've, created
Oh,
now
really?
8 million. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing to me. So with staff as the center of everything that we do has never wavered. Some of the other topics really fluctuate again with sort of macro trends, inflation up, pricing up, costs, all those things. We can make pretty good guesses at what the data is going to show us based on financial data, frankly. But that core never changes, and it's our rally cry at this point. And just I'm thinking of Matt Lasher. People over everything. People are greater than everything, right? That's the absolute truth if you're the customer of a car dealership in the U.S.
And it's intensifying.
Yeah.
That old
Same old
saying,
song and dance.
people buy cars from people they like and trust.
Totally.
Still true.
Well, thank you guys. We look forward to next year's, and hopefully some of those little insights you get along the year, think of us as they come out, and we'll
Please do.
bring you back on.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll see you guys at NADA.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
See you,
All right,
everybody.
guys.
All right,
Have a good
gentlemen.
one.
Last show
Have a
of
great
the year
weekend.
coming up next week.
Thank you.